feels good to be a gangster. That's good stuff. Why is it always Hornady? It's always Hornady. Why? In this case, it's a good thing. Well, we're having to improvise a little bit today. The normal shooting range literally got somebody camping in it. I guess it's opening weekend of general deer rifle or youth or something. I didn't actually look at that because I don't have a deer tag this year. But we are in a place I like to call Beggar's Canyon. It's a nice little spot. It's not my ideal spot for shooting and zeroing in, but it's safe, out of the way. Got a big backstop. Nice big canyon to shoot down into with nothing behind it. So that's nice. This place is crawling with hunters though right now. They're all over the place out here. One guy's dragging a deer right over a couple hills away. Half mile that way, he's dragging his first deer out. Or dragging a deer out already, so that's pretty cool. Good on them. Good luck. Went out doing some more shooting the other day, yesterday, and the more I shoot the 7mm, the more impressed I am with the caliber itself. Not necessarily just the cartridge of the 7 PRC, but the caliber itself, the 7mm caliber. It's an impressive, and if not gangster, caliber. I think something every hunter should consider is a 7mm in their catalog, in their weapon store, somewhere in some capacity. What specific cartridge that looks like for you is gonna vary by hunter and preference. All right. Yesterday was like the moon dustiest day ever out shooting. What kind of clown builds his hunting base camp in the middle of the most used public land shooting range in the county? Like in all of Yavapai County, the most publicly used, most well-known, most traveled shooting range that everybody's trying to go sight their guns in right now because elk season's coming and gun season's here. Who builds their base camp literally right in the middle of the range? No joke. Sitting next to the 100-yard target in the middle of the lane where you can't even, like, all the other targets are right behind it. Who does that? The general theory is from the folks who live out there, like my parents and the other neighbors we have out there that are hunters that have hunted that land for the last 20 years, 30 years, is that it's somebody from the valley. I did have a chance to get out this week, and do some more shooting with the 7 PRC. Now, I'm talking about the 7 caliber in general. My personal experience with it right now is with the 7 PRC. So I'm not necessarily talking about how wonderful and great the cartridge itself is, just 7 PRC. Oh, it's the most magical cartridge in the world. Although I think it has a lot about it that is highly desirable. I think there's a lot of things about this cartridge, the cartridge itself, that are to love, like absolutely love. Now that we're starting to get things dialed in with my hand loads, and I'll show you some results of that here in a minute. Yeah, I think this cartridge itself is a winner overall. I don't think it's the only 7mm in the world you can do cool stuff with. And it may not even be the best at all around her. Although, no, yeah, there are some things the 7 Mag may do a little better, a little faster with smaller bullets. And there's some things, you know, like 7mm08 is gonna be a lot lighter shooting, smaller bullets again, but lighter shooting, easier to manage. Great for hunting, all that stuff. You got your 7 short mags, your 7, man, I need some more coffee or tea this morning. Your 7mm Winchester short magnum, similar cartridges to that, your 280 Ackley improved, all those things. They're, you know, some cartridges are gonna do some things a little bit better or maybe worse or not as much or whatever, you know, but I think the 7 PRC is an all-around fantastic cartridge, and it's not just because it's the latest and greatest newest thing from Hornady, the newest marketing ploy, but because of the 7mm caliber itself, the 7mm bullets, and how to capitalize on that. Man, it was dirty yesterday, laying in the dirt in the moon dust. I had people driving by me while I was out there because the range I was shooting at, the little canyon there, Beggar's Canyon, it's kind of like a Death Star trench run almost. It's a cool looking little place. But it runs right alongside of a road that everybody drives out there, and there were people all over the place yesterday scouting and glassing and just out goofing off for a good Friday afternoon row. All right, so let's run some numbers. Why is it that the 7mm itself is such a great caliber? Just the 7mm, 2.284 diameter bullet. I think you have a lot of grain weight options. You've got them from the 150s up to the 180s, 195s in the Berger catalog, maybe even slightly heavier than some others. But so you can run, in the 7mm itself, you can run grain weights anywhere from, say, 120 to 190, 195. That's a huge range of bullets and options to choose from for various applications, various things you might be wanting, and various cartridges too. So we're talking everything from the 7mm.8 up to the 7 Rem Mag. Let's just say that's the stretch, or the 28 nozzler. Let's go with that, the big dog. 28 nozzler to 7mm.8. You've got a bullet caliber combination you can find for grain weights that will fit most of those, cartridges in that range. And you can fulfill just about any application with it. You can actually go from varmints to big game, moose, elk, bear, all that good stuff with the 7mm cartridge. Where it beats something like the 6.5 Creedmoor, no, it's not quite as maybe slick as some of the 6.5 Creedmoor bullets, although some of the ballistic coefficients are really comparable. I mean, let's talk about the one I'm going to pick from Hornady's website, the 175 ELD-X, 175 grain weight bullet in the 7mm, has a G1 ballistic of .689, a G7 of .347. And that is phenomenal. That is a phenomenal frontal diameter, lots of speed and aerodynamic ballistic coefficient downrange, so you get better ballistics than a 308 would in a comparable grain weight, let's say the 178 ELD-X from Hornady. But when you compare that to the 143 ELD-X, you're looking at a G1 ballistics of .625 and a G7 of .315. So the 7mm actually has a higher ballistic coefficient than your Gucci whiz-bangy 6.5 Creedmoors. And I would argue in a cartridge like the 6.5 or the 7 PRC, you can push it faster than definitely a 6.5 Creedmoor. Maybe not quite as fast as a 6.5 PRC. And that's where the 6.5 PRC kind of keeps up with the 7 PRC, or like a 7 Mag, say loading a comparable bullet in the 7 Mag. 7 Rem Mag is a popular 7 cartridge that's been around for a long time. It's super useful on game and stuff like that. I mean, it's proven its track record time and time again for a lot of years now. A lot longer than the 7 PRC's been around, longer than 28 Nozzler and stuff like that. So something like the 7 Rem Mag, let's just use it for context. You're pushing some pretty darn good sized bullets to really comparable speeds as something like a 6.5 PRC. The gain though is maybe the 6.5 PRC is a little flatter out to some distances, or at some distances it may be a little flatter. The gain though with the 7mm is that frontal diameter and sectional density. You get a higher penetration rate and a higher expansion rate. A bigger bullet, more mass, more velocity, does more damage. At the end of the day, the 7mm does more damage and is more well-rounded than your 6.5s are going to be to a lot of applications and a lot of distances at longer ranges and stuff like that. So let's talk longer ranges. I'm going to run you over some of the ballistics that I personally have been getting out of the 7 PRC. All right, so that I'm not mistaken, or so that I'm not taken out of context. I don't want to make it look like I'm just simping for Hornady and the Hornady cartridge, the 7 PRC, as the latest, the greatest, be all, end all of all the things in the world out there. I'm specifically talking about the 7mm caliber. Whether it's a 7.8 or a 28 Nozzler. In my case, the 7 PRC. It's the experience I have in front of me right now. And if it was a 7 Mag, we'd be talking about the same thing. So, but the 7 caliber is just so efficient, especially in the heavier grain weights, say the 160s and up. It's so efficient at longer ranges at retaining energy, and in various weapon platforms can be made extremely accurate and extremely precise at super long ranges. And the 7mm just carries its retained energy and its velocity and its punch so much further than the 6.5s do in a lot of ways, in a lot of context. But it does it more efficiently than the 308 does. It does it with less fuss, with less kick, with less recoil. There are some fantastic 308 calibers out there, some 30 calibers out there, like the 300 Win Mag, the 300 Win Short Mag. They do some amazing things at long range. They're fantastic cartridges too. And I would definitely build a 30 caliber, you know, no question. But I think the 7mm is kind of like a Goldilocks cartridge. Not cartridge, it's like a Goldilocks caliber. It's a balance of high sectional density, sleeker diameter than the 30 cal, so you're getting less kick, less boom, bang, and all the fuss, but you're getting more than what you get out of a 6.5, so you have a lot more terminal effect for animals and stuff like that. So it's almost a Goldilocks caliber, it really is. So let's just run the numbers. I finally nailed down with my 7 PRC, I think I finally got myself down to a good hunting load and a good match load. And of course the match load turned out to be with the Hornady 180 ELD-Ms. Frustrating because the worst factory load results I got were with the 180 ELD-Ms. Absolute horrendous, terrible, all over the map. 3 to 4 minute of angle groups out of the factory ammo I tried. But when I started hand loading it, I worked my way through 3 different powders now. When I started hand loading it, I started noticing some gain in accuracy and precision, and the velocities were pretty good. You know, like this is a 22-inch barrel. I'm not gonna get 3,000 feet per second out of this thing, just not. But I can get pretty darn close to 29. And with the match load I just worked up, so my, you know, this is my long range match load for goofing off plinking. I kind of just slapped this load together just because to see, you know what I mean? I just kind of randomly cherry picked a grain weight after having tested some high and some low to see where the pressure sign's introduced. I backed off of that a little bit and I just cherry picked. I'm gonna go with 69.5 grains of Ram Shot Grand in some brass, Hornady brass, and just see what happens. And 2,900 feet per second is my average for velocity. That's awesome. 2,900 feet per second out of a 22-inch 7mm shooting a 180 grain bullet is pretty stinking juicy and will stay juicy for a long way. So we're talking varmint, even deer, light deer, you could smack with this thing, pronghorn, whatever. I was averaging groups, the best of the lot was a half-minute group, 0.571 minutes of angle. That's pretty darn cool. I mean, that to me, like, all right, that is a good match load. And shooting the 180 grain ELD-M, it's a high ballistic coefficient bullet. It's got a lot of meat that carries for a long way. So comparing that to similar results I got with the other powders I tried N568, and I'm just gonna pull a couple groups here. With the N568, I was getting about 1.5 inch groups, 1.5 minute groups. And even with the Stay-Ball HD, which was a decent powder with some of the other bullets I tried, I was still only getting about 1.5 minute groups out of the 180 grain ELD-Ms. And the velocities were down closer to the 2750s, 2760, that kind of range. So I wasn't getting up there to 28, I wasn't getting up there to 29. I was actually pretty low on the velocity scale with those two. That's why I've decided to switch powders. Now I will say the one big disappointment I've seen so far in the 7 PRC specifically that I'm working on right now is the Sierra Match Kings. I'm not getting anything better than 1.25 to 1.5 minute groups with any of the powders, any of the grain weights I've tried. What, that little guy? I wouldn't worry about that little guy. Don't worry about that guy. All right, I'm gonna be honest, when I first went out and started shooting yesterday, it was bad. I was yanking that trigger like pulling teeth, man. It was bad. I was blowing crap all over the place, rounds all over the place. I didn't even record the first few groups and the first, any of the shooting I did right at first. I didn't even record that crap because, dude, I was yanking it so bad yesterday. It takes me a little while. I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to the 7 PRC, the more Magnum style cartridges, it takes me a little while to calm down when I first get to the range and actually just settle into breaking good shots and taking my time and not going every time. Because the stinking muzzle brake, the radial brake on that stinking 7 PRC, which I am switching, dude, it blows moon dust all up in your grill, all up in your ears, your feet. I had black boogers for an hour after going to the range yesterday, just trying to get it out of my daggum nose and mouth and lungs and everywhere, just because every time you hit that trigger on that radial brake 7 mag, boom, just... So I just don't think those 183s stabilize very well in this particular barrel. And I think the 180 Sierra Match Kings might do a little better. So I'm gonna pick some of those up. We're gonna try that out for a long range match load because the Sierras tend to be a little more precise and consistent than the Hornadys on average. I'm not saying the Hornadys can't be, because obviously they can, and I'm getting some pretty fantastic results out of this gun. The last load I'm gonna talk about is the hunting load I've decided to settle on. While I did get higher velocities using the 175 Nosler AccuBond long range and Ramshot Grand, I was getting close to 2950 to 2925. So I was getting some pretty darn good velocities out of that stuff. The group sizes were over 1.5 minutes. And from a hunting load, I want a little better than that. Now I may tweak that load a little bit and work on my grain weights with that the Ramshot Grand in that specific bullet. I may tweak that just a little bit and see if I can't maybe dial it back just a little bit and see if I can't find a better velocity and accuracy node in there that's close to the 2900, which would make an amazing, amazing hunting bullet. But the hunting bullet I've settled on right now for this particular gun in this particular season, because I have potentially an elk tag coming up. I found one that I can get over the counter, and I'm going to do that. The 175 Nosler AccuBond long range and Venerable in 568. I made some more of those. I went back and reloaded a few more in my nickel cases from the Hornady CX bullets I'd been shooting. The Hornady Outfitter, it's got nickel brass. So I loaded some in the nickel brass, and I saw a gain of about 40 to 50 feet per second over what I had been getting out of regular Hornady brass. So I'm close to 2,800 feet per second, and I'm getting under a minute average group sizes. So around about that 0.8 minute. That to me is enough for this year to be a fantastic hunting load. And why I say that, so let's just look at the velocities in that range. So 2750, let's call it an average of 2750 with a 7mm bullet, and what I'm getting out of my hunting gun, hunting rifle, and hunting load today, on the day, this temperature, this environment, etc., etc. 1,500 foot-pounds. Let's use that as our metric. This rifle, this load, on the day, sub-minute, will carry 1,500 foot-pounds out to 750 yards. Dude, that's about 2 to 3, maybe even 400 yards further than I will ever try to take an elk or a mule deer or something big. So retained energy is not a problem with the 7mm projectile. Whether you're launching that bullet out of a 7 mag, a 28 Nosler, or even if you want to go down to the 7mm 08 and lose about 200 or 300 foot per second, it's still something you could do with this caliber and that specific bullet, even or the 175 ELD-X or whatever, pick your flavor. You could take that sucker and still retain enough energy and velocity for ethical, clean kills in any of the 7mm calibers. So I've done the math for 7.08 up to 7 PRC because that's relevant to me. And with those bullets in that kind of grain weight, so let's say the 160 to 175s, you've got enough ethical range, penetration, energy, and velocity to make kills with on the low end, say the 7mm 8 out to 300 to 400 yards. And with something like the 7 PRC, which is kind of just an optimized 7mm package, out to 700 or 800 yards if you wanted to. And if you're looking at deer, lighter, thin skin, lighter game, you could push that well beyond that. I mean, say 1,000 foot-pounds is the ethical, muzzle energy foot-pounds to take a deer. You're still looking at 1,125 yards with this gun. Me specifically with this package, I've tested this. I've tested the velocities and I've doped them out to at least 850. So it's like, dude, that's a killer, man. That's a gangster caliber. All right, so all I'm gonna say is there is a lot to love about the 7mm, and I think it is probably one of the most Goldilocks calibers out there, if there is such a thing. And I'm talking for hunting. Applications are gonna application specific, caliber needs and what game you're playing. There may be something different, better for target practice, long range, or whatever. Let's just say for hunting and general use shooting, even in like a sniper application or something like that. If you wanted a short action, high efficient caliber that had a little bit more reach in a 308 and a little bit more punch in a 6.5, something like a 7mm 08 or even a 280 Ackley improved, or even 7 PRC, would make a fantastic anti-personnel round. Let's put it that way. Something that you could precisely engage hostile targets at some pretty extreme distances. And this is like, that's where it shines. To me, that's where the 7mm shines. It shines at bringing more meat to the target at more extreme distances than something like a 6mm or 6.5 does, without punishing you like a 30 cal does. Because to get the 30 cals that efficient at that long range, 308 is a great cartridge. I love 308. Past 700 or 800 yards, it falls off the map real quick when compared to something like this. You got to get up into the magnums to get something out of it this real juicy, like the 300 Win Short Mag. Also a fantastic cartridge. I'm building one of those right now. Soon we're going to be building that, and we're going to be talking about that bad boy because I'm pretty excited. But the 300 Win Mag, you know, stuff like that, you got to get up into the big boys if you want to reach past them extended distances. 708 will do it, man, in a lot of different cartridges in the range from 708 to 28 nozzler and everything in between. All right, let me know what you think. Get in the comments below. Have you shot 7mm calibers? I haven't in the past. It's one of those calibers that I always kind of looked over and ignored, and thought, oh no, you know, it's got to be the 6.5 or it's got to be a 30 cal. Like that has always been my thinking. Is like it's either 30 cals, 30 magnums, 308s, or it's got to be a 6.5 or a 6mm, because I love the 6mm. The 6mm caliber is an amazing caliber, especially the 6 ARC and the 6 GTs and stuff like that. They're fantastic. They're fun, great for varmints, great for long range, great for target, great for just flat shooting, light shooting, you know, game guns. If you're going to be gaming it on a PRS match or whatever, definitely go with one of those. I wouldn't take a 7 mag for a PRS gun unless I had to. NRL Hunter, yeah, I'd definitely take this bad boy right here. This one, as it is, with my loads I've loaded up, yeah, I'd take that for an NRL Hunter match and have fun. I may not win, but I would have a lot of fun. So where was I going with that? I don't remember. What are your thoughts about the 7mm caliber itself? Whether you like the 7 PRC or not, whether you're a Hornady fanboy or not, it doesn't matter. I'm not a fanboy. I'm what you would call probably company ambiguous. If they make a good product, I like it. I don't care how popular it is or how unpopular it is. If it's a good cartridge, good caliber, and it's got good ballistics, and I can use it for my application, I'm going for it. Whether it's Hornady, Nosler, whoever. So tell me what you think. Get in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Y'all be blessed and stay sharp. Happy shooting.